perspective, it's really legitimising perhaps some of the situations that doctors find themselves in now, and going further and then putting a framework in place for. I think it needs to happen.
Emmanuel, it might have been a different answer. It'll be interesting. I know that the reason you chose the Massey wording, and that makes sense. But if you changed it to things like hopeless condition or something a bit more vague, it'd be interesting to see what people said then.
That's right. But I agree with May in that the reason why we've got different results to these two questions is simply because doctors are objective and impartial as opposed to someone who's close to the individual concerned.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Public opinion steady, as I said, with the results of those two Research New Zealand questions about euthanasia.
But that drink driving stop by New Zealand Police was absolutely outrageous, and that is a right that's being investigated. There are so many laws that would breach.
I know, we talked about it quite a bit, and I think it stunned quite a few people. Are you all right with this idea? CBC in Canada reports on the new digital canvas being used by Canadian police, which is a high-tech equivalent of knocking on thousands of doors for information. The Ontario Police Department sent text messages to 7,500 potential witnesses of a murder using phone numbers from a nearby cell tower's logs. And these were people who could have been in the area where a man was murdered. They obtained the numbers through a court order. Citizens were requested to voluntarily answer a few simple questions. Does any aspect of this worry you?
Well, I mean, look, the question is, did they have reasonable ground to suspect that an offence had been committed? Well, here obviously there was a murder. These people may have relevant information. It was voluntary. There are potential Privacy Act concerns, but actually this is arguably similar to DNA dragnets. The New Zealand Police may apply for production orders for telecommunications material under the Search and Surveillance Act 2012. So, if they were forcing them, it's just the whole way this package is put together. I mean, I don't think I've got a problem with this particular one.
Okay.
May, how different is it from the DIC, the breathalyzer check situation?
Oh, I think it's fundamentally different. That breathalyzer check, that drink driving stop. I mean, drink driving stops can be put in place, but only for drink driving. You can't use it as a ruse to try and pick up, people who might have been involved in other suspicious activities. I mean, Bill of Rights talks about freedom from arbitrary arrest, detention, right to be freedom of association. There's all sorts of other problems. I think this is different. This is really about trying to find evidence which is relevant, and it's just a very effective means of doing so, and it's probably quite efficient and effective. The issue here is simply that it remains voluntary. I mean, you might be disgusted by the fact that the police got your number, but you don't have to respond, and there's no implications if you don't. They then pick you up and say you're a suspect or something.
They're thinking of trying to make people respond. That's the next, but they'll need another court order for that.
Oh, yeah, wow. Another court order.
All Hallows Eve. Oh, we're out of time. Pretty well, absolutely. Are you a fan of Halloween?
We're going trick-and-treating tonight.
Oh, you are?
Yeah,
right.
we are driving. It's our year.
Mark Ingalls?
I love that Batman and Robin one on Facebook where this is New Zealand, not Halloween.
Yeah, there's a bit of that around. Mark Ingalls, May Chen, thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. And Checkpoint with John Campbell coming right up.
Kia ora everyone, I'm Sharon Brett Kelly, and on behalf of our excellent team, Heidi Mai, welcome to Checkpoint on RNZ National. Tonight, 2 are dead after a helicopter crash in Northland. We'll have the latest from our reporter there. In Italy, there are warnings that earthquakes could go on for weeks after last night's powerful shake. Dreamworld reveals every ride will be audited in a safety review. 3 of Solid Energy's mines are sold to a joint venture of Bathurst Resources and Nelson-based Tally's Food Group. And the widow of a lineman who died after the power pole he was working on toppled over fears no lessons have been learned by the power company almost 6 years ago.
RNZ News at 5. Kia ora, good evening, ko Katrina Batanaho. 2 people have died in a helicopter crash in the Glenbervie forest near Whangarei. The wreckage of the Robinson R44 was found in the pine forest this afternoon. The Rescue Coordination Centre says the chopper's distress beacon was set off just after 1 o'clock and Whangarei's rescue helicopter reached the scene just after 2. The forestry owner, Rayonia, says the helicopter was doing survey work for the company when it crashed. A spokesperson says the company is distressed at what's happened and its Glenbervie workers have been helping emergency services at the scene. The Robinson helicopter, already blamed for 18 deaths in New Zealand, is under the highest possible level of scrutiny by the Transport Accident Investigation Commission. The model has been plagued by so-called mast-bumping incidents in which the main rotor blades strike the cabin, causing the helicopter to break up in mid-air. 14 such incidents have been investigated since 1996. The Commission last week said it's often difficult to determine exactly what causes them, but 4 previous recommendations have yet to be actioned by regulators and policymakers, and there's a real risk of further accidents. The 300 or so registered Robinsons make up roughly 40% of the country's helicopter fleet. The widow of a linesman killed when the power pole he was working on toppled over is accusing the power company Delta of putting profits above safety. Karen Steele's husband Roger was electrocuted in December 2010 when the pole he was working up in Miller's Flat near Roxburgh fell over, throwing him more than 20 metres down a riverbank. Mrs Steele says she's shocked at the claims of a former Delta staff member, Richard Healy, who says there are still thousands of rotting and unsafe power poles in Dunedin. She says the company isn't putting enough resources into ensuring its poles are safe and it needs to sort out its priorities. A senior Democrat says the head of the FBI may have broken the law by revealing the Bureau was investigating emails possibly linked to Hillary Clinton. The Democratic leader in the Senate, Harry Reid, is accusing FBI Director James Comey of violating an act that bars officials from influencing an election. Meanwhile, the FBI has obtained a warrant to search emails belonging to a top Clinton aide, Huma Abedin. The ABC's James Randall has more.
The emails were found as part of a separate investigation into the disgraced former Congressman Anthony Weiner. His estranged wife is an aide to Mrs Clinton, and hundreds of thousands of her emails have been found on the former couple's shared laptop. Much of the controversy over the Clinton email saga was due to thousands of emails that were deleted before authorities could see them. This fresh cache may bring forward new information. The FBI concluded its investigation into the scandal in July, criticising Mrs Clinton for her carelessness, but choosing not to lay charges.
James Randall reporting. The police recommend people steer clear of dressing up as clowns for Halloween tonight to avoid causing hysteria. A so-called creepy clowns craze has swept several countries, including New Zealand, in which people dressed as clowns have been attacking and scaring passers-by. Inspector Dave Glossop says the police will have a high profile in the community tonight. He says the police want people to have a good time, be responsible and look after their friends.
Our recommendation, though, is to not stir things up. We don't want people dressing up as clowns in case it creates any hysteria. But generally that just comes into people's behaviour as well. Say just look after each other and be responsible.
Inspector Dave Glossop. It's 5:04. To sport, and the British motor racing driver Lewis Hamilton says all he can do is keep on winning and hope something goes his way as he chases an unlikely 4th world driver's title. For the second straight Formula One race, Hamilton dominated the field in winning the Mexican Grand Prix to cut Mercedes teammate Nico Rosberg's championship lead to 19 points with 2 races remaining. Hamilton has to hope Rosberg, who finished second, slips up in either Brazil or Abu Dhabi.
With this pace, if I can take it moving forwards, that'll be great. I'm not giving up, and as long as I get to when I cross the line in Abu Dhabi, knowing that I've given it everything I've got, then I can, be proud of my performances.
Lewis Hamilton. The Black Caps coach Mike Hesson says they won't be brushing aside their poor last performance against India. The New Zealand side arrive home today after losing the Test series 3-0 and the one-day series 3-2. Having fought back to 2-2 in the one-day series to give them a chance of an historic series win in India, the Black Caps folded in the final game to be all out for 73 in just 23 overs, their fifth lowest one-day total as they chased 270 to win.
Can't allow that sort of performance to creep into our game, and we need to work out why and just acknowledge some of our decision making was obviously not up to scratch.
Mike Hessam. United States rider Travis McCabe has claimed the Tour's leader yellow jersey after finishing third on today's second of the Tour of Southland. The stage was won by Australian Aidan Tuvey. That's the news.
Pork barrel politics in Auckland.
People know that this is a problem that needs resolving now. It's one of the most congested roads in Auckland and it affects people's lives.
The politics of prosecution in America.
There is fury among the ranks of Hillary Clinton supporters such as myself, likely to help motivate us to vote in larger numbers.
And political pirates in Iceland.
We do have 10 wonderful pirates that are coming into Parliament.
Poll to poll. Guyan Espiner and Susie Ferguson Morning Report, weekdays from 6. Then on 9 to noon, how can New Zealand businesses take advantage of new virtual and augmented reality technology? And after 10, Australian Air Force nurse Sharon Bone, who returned to serve in Afghanistan despite breaking her spine in a helicopter crash. Join me, Catherine Ryan, on 9 to noon after Morning Report on RNZ National.
Met service weather through to midnight tomorrow from Northland to Taranaki, including Coromandel Bay of plenty in the central high country. Mainly fine, however isolated showers clearing this evening. Some heavy with thunderstorms possible from Northland to northern Waikato. Cloud increasing tomorrow with rain spreading from the west during the afternoon and evening. Gisborne to Wairarapa, showers north of Napier clearing this evening and becoming mainly fine everywhere. Showers returning tomorrow afternoon. Whanganui to Wellington, fine. Cloud increasing tomorrow evening with the odd spot of rain. Marlborough, Nelson and Bulla mainly fine, however isolated afternoon or evening showers inland today and periods of rain from tomorrow afternoon. Canterbury to Southland, mainly fine, scattered rain developing south of Christchurch tomorrow afternoon or evening. Westland and Fiordland, isolated showers turning to rain tomorrow morning, then easing later. The Chatham Islands, a few showers. It's 5:07 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Kia ora, Katrina. 2 people have died in a helicopter crash in Northland. The wreckage of the Robinson R44 was found in the Glenbervie pine forest near Whangarei this afternoon. The accident comes just days after the Transport Accident Investigation Commission has added the Robinson helicopter to its official watch list, the highest warning that can be given. Our Northland reporter Lois Williams joins us now on the phone. Good afternoon, Lois. What do we know about the accident?
Sharon, the Rescue Coordination Centre said that the chopper's distress beacon went off just after 1 this afternoon, and Whangarei's rescue helicopter flew to the scene, got there just after 2, and they found the wreckage. It had crashed in an area known as Glenbervie Forest. It's a big commercial pine forest, about 5,000 hectares, very hilly area just north of Whangarei. And this Robinson had crashed in the area which is known as the Lookout. The 2 men on board were contractors. They'd been working for the forest owner, Raianea, and they were either weed spraying or survey work, and somehow they've come to grief. Their bodies were found at the scene, and there was debris scattered over quite a large area. Emergency services are still there, and the police are now in charge of the recovery effort.
Lois, that area, the Lookout, what's it like? Is it very hilly?
It is quite steep. The pine forest is very, very steep, and it's big gullies and big ridges, right? And it's riddled with roads and tracks. It's a very popular mountain bike area. And this is just, little areas have different names. You know, they give the forestry roads different names, and the Lookout is just one of the, it's quite a high area, obviously.
And who else have you spoken to about this?
I have spoken to emergency services, and I've spoken to Raianea just this evening. I spoke to Paul Nicol, who's a manager for Raianea. He said that the staff are distraught, that they knew these 2 guys. He believes that they're locals. They're contractors, and the company has used them for years, so they know them well, and they're like family. He said they're all very distressed, but the forestry staff who work up there at the forest headquarters have been helping emergency services at the crash scene, and the company's health and safety director and operations manager are on their way up to support those staff.
Thanks very much for that, Lois. That's our Northland reporter. To quake-rattled central Italy now, where seismologists are warning that earthquakes could go on for weeks and a domino effect along Italy's central Apennine fault system. Thousands of people are spending the night in cars, tents and temporary accommodation following yesterday's 6.6 magnitude earthquake. It was the strongest quake in Italy for 3 decades and followed a series of quakes over the past 2 months, the worst in August, which killed 300 people. About 20 people have been injured in the latest quake, but no deaths have been reported. Powerful aftershocks are still rocking the region, further damaging homes and historic buildings, as the BBC's James Reynolds reports from the badly hit town of Norcia.
Central Italy had its 4th earthquake in 2 months. The town of Visso was hit. The church of St. Benedict in the nearby town of Norcia also came down. The nuns managed to escape. In this region, you need to know how to get away quickly.
There was just an aftershock just now, and some stones from this ancient entranceway fell down, and you can see there is still a sense from people here that the earthquakes, the aftershocks have not yet finished, that this is at the moment not a safe place for people to live.
It's a mess. We got really scared. You just saw what's happened, the aftershock. We're trying to find our things and then we'll go.
For now, a park bench may be the safest place. Since the first quake in August, many have decided to stay outside. Stefano Boldrini and his 8-year-old daughter Stefania sleep in his van. I asked if they'd remain in Norcia.
Non rimanete qua?
No. Come fai? Non c'è più la scuola. No. How could we? There's no more school or church or police station. There's nothing here anymore.
Italian officials in Norcia have set up an emergency headquarters. The aftershocks have now become so common that no one reacts anymore. Here, the computer equipment shakes, but registration carries on. And this town will help its dazed residents move from here to the coast. No one is sure when the next quake will come.
James Reynolds from the quake-stricken town of Norcia in central Italy. The widow of a lineman who died after the power pole he was working on toppled over says she is shocked no lessons have been learned by the power company Delta almost 6 years after her husband's death. Roger Steele was killed in December 2010 whilst working up a pole in Miller's Flat. His widow Karen says it's unbelievable there are still thousands of red-flagged poles around Dunedin and central Otago. An internal investigation by WorkSafe New Zealand and Dunedin City Holdings into the condition of almost 3,000 rotting and failing poles is underway after former Delta staff member Richard Healy turned whistleblower. Earlier this afternoon, I spoke with Karen Steele via Skype video, and she told me what happened to her husband Roger, who had worked for Delta for 43 years.
He picked up a job sheet and he was sent down to Miller's Flat to change a crossarm on a new pole that had just been installed 6 weeks previous. And but unbeknown to him, the pole had actually been checked and found to be not correctly installed. It should have been another metre into the ground. And I believe that he was on his own, and I believe he climbed the pole once and took the crossarm off, and as he was going up it again, it fell over with him attached, and he fell down a bank, a 22-metre bank, and unfortunately he was electrocuted as well. So we actually went through 2 court cases, 1 court case and 1 inquiry, because they could never explain to us how he was electrocuted. And I like to think that he was dead before he fell, but it was the coroner, they couldn't tell us definitely.
Why did he go up the pole, there was nothing to tell him that he shouldn't?
No, there was no red flag on it, and there should have been. It had been inspected previously, and it was found to be faulty, but it wasn't red tagged. And he had no idea. He wouldn't have climbed it, of course, if it had a red tag on it.
So there was a court case, and it went to the coroner's court. And what was the outcome of those two?
Well, Delta admitted liability, and they were fined $75,000. And then we went to the coroner, who was very good to us. We weren't satisfied because there was no mention in the court case that Roger had been electrocuted as well, and he would never have survived either of those incidents. But we wanted, why didn't they mention it? So we went back to the coroner, and he agreed with us, and he ordered an inquiry, and yes, so it dragged on and on, and it wasn't a nice time.
No, and what was the upshot? What were the findings or the recommendations of the coroner in terms of what Delta should do?
Well, there were many. I can't actually remember, but he did recommend that they shouldn't be on their own. Not that worried Roger, because he'd been doing the job so long and he was so experienced that working alone wasn't a problem for him. But the coroner recommended that there should always be a pair that went out to fix faults.
So when you hear that about 3,000 rotting poles are still out there, how does that make you feel?
Well, I've actually cut myself off from Delta for the last 6 years, and I actually moved from my old home, our home, and I've moved up the hill, so I don't see the Delta trucks because it's just so upsetting for me. And I just, because I haven't inquired or asked about how things were going at Delta, I got quite a surprise, a shock really, to think that nothing's actually happened. In fact, it's got worse. And yes, it's just so disappointing that no lessons have been learnt from his death.
What are you worried about, that there could be another accident?
Well, it's just, it's unbelievable that there are so many poles that are red flagged round Central Otago and Dunedin, and they're so far behind in maintenance because everything boils down to money, and it seems like they haven't been giving the maintenance in their core business the money to fix these poles. It's just been put off, and they do a few, and then yes, it's in a terrible state.
And I guess it's a terrible reminder for you about what happened 6 years ago.
Well, it is, because we find it quite hard to come to terms with how he died. You should never go to work and not come home from work. You know, if it had happened in a car accident or when he was out deer stalking, you could accept it. But we as a family have found it very hard to accept that it was at work. I would never have thought it would ever happen to him, but there you go.
That's widow Karen Steele speaking about her husband Roger, who was killed after an accident up a faulty power pole in December 2010. Coming up, Dreamworld launches a park-wide safety audit of every ride at the theme park, and how a 2003 Mitsubishi Diamante has become a Christchurch Conemobile. We'd love to hear from you in any way you choose. You can text us on 2101. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ. Facebook us, Checkpoint with John Campbell, or email checkpoint@radionz.co.nz. And don't forget, you can watch us online at rnz.co.nz/checkpoint or on Freeview Channel 50. The sale of Solid Energy's Stockton mine in Westport is being hailed by the region's leaders as a new start, carrying the hope of new jobs. Stockton and two Waikato mines, Rotowaro and Maramarua, have been sold by the administrators of the failed state-owned enterprise to a joint venture of newcomer Bathurst Resources and the food company Tallies. The rest of Solid Energy's mines have been sold to two other small operators, ending the drawn-out 4-year collapse. Ian Telfer has this report.
Bathurst Resources burst onto the New Zealand scene from Australia in 2013, promising a big and controversial new coal mine on the Denniston Plateau near Westport, though the project stalled. Today, Bathurst's fortunes changed as it bought 3 major mines and became the country's largest coal company. The Chief Executive, Richard Takon, says it'll be a big lift in the size of the company.
These are great assets. Solid Energy have done a fantastic job even in this last 6 months to grow this business, and we see them as a fantastic add-on to our existing operations and our existing customer base.
Appropriately enough, after Solid Energy's implosion, the new Bathurst Tallies company being formed is called Phoenix Coal. Mr Takon wouldn't say how much Bathurst has paid, but says it'll need to borrow money to fund the purchase. He says the company will be giving more details on Wednesday. But Westport's Mayor, Gary Howard, is already welcoming the deal.
Really pleased about the process, particularly in, firstly, the board and the management of Solid Energy to continue the mines operating while going through a sales process has been absolutely dynamic, and congratulate them for getting there. And with the actual sale to Bathurst Tallies, really good. Looking forward to working with Phoenix, which is the company concerned, and actually making sure it progresses and keeps good relationships with the community.
Stockton's workforce has crashed from its peak of 1,200 people to just 250 today. Gary Howard says there's now hope Bathurst can take advantage of a big rebound in the coking coal price this year to expand the number of jobs. The West Coast organiser for the E2 union, Garth Elliott, says the sale's good news because the last 4 years have been so difficult.
Really hard for them, I think. A lot of insecurities. They didn't know where they were from one minute to the next, really. Solid Energy would tell them, that the process is ongoing and it's looking very positive, but in the back of their minds, they were all wondering really what's actually going to happen. Are these places going to be sold and we're going to be out of a job? So obviously, there's a lot of processes to go through and a lot of things to do, but ultimately it's a little bit more positive today than what it was yesterday.
The union's so relieved even the prospect of the mines being sold into private hands doesn't worry it. The Labour Party says the sale's a sad indictment on the government, which it says destroyed a valuable company. But the Minister of Finance, Bill English, says this is the best deal possible.
No, we're absolutely sure it's the right thing. The government had bailed out Solid Energy once before, then it got in trouble again. The government's track record in these commodity businesses is government ownership isn't that good. But look, this is making the best of a situation we would have all been better to have avoided.
Not everyone's happy with this deal, especially environmentalists who oppose coal mining and are alarmed at the prospect that Bathurst Resources' Denniston project next door to Stockton might now move ahead. For Checkpoint, Ian Telfer.
An internal audit of every ride at Dreamworld is now underway following the deaths of 4 people on the Thunder River Rapid ride last week. The theme park's CEO, Craig Davidson, held a press conference a short time ago to reveal details of a park-wide independent safety review. He told media a decision on when the park might reopen has not been made.
We will not be making a decision on reopening or providing a time frame at any stage this week. As to staff and our team, today we've commenced a cautious and staged approach to allow our staff to return to work at Dreamworld. We have around 200 team members who have come to work today. Staff who are at work today are here because they want to be. Returning to work has not been compulsory. It is for those staff who want to come back and help the park and support their colleagues. As I said on Saturday, all staff will be paid during our closure period, regardless of their attendance here at the park. We will continue to have counsellors available for our staff to talk to for some time. We have commenced a systematic and methodical park-wide safety review of every mechanical ride in our park. This will include the appointment of arm's-length and independent, world-leading mechanical engineering and workplace safety experts. We expect this audit will have at least 3 tiers. Firstly, we have commenced an internal review of all park ride operating policies and procedures. This includes specialist engineering reviews of every ride at Dreamworld. Secondly, in addition to our internal audit, there will be an independent, arm's-length mechanical engineering and workplace safety review of every Dreamworld ride. We have commenced discussions with a number of the world's leading mechanical engineering and workplace safety experts. Third, we are absolutely committed to working closely with the Queensland Workplace Health and Safety team. The work of the independent engineering experts will be shared with and peer-reviewed by Workplace Health and Safety.
That's Dreamworld's Craig Davidson speaking a short time ago. The Humble road cone has spread like an orange disease across large parts of Christchurch since the earthquakes. Now a crack squad, or to be more accurate, 2 guys in a 2003 Mitsubishi Diamante with a trailer on the back, have been tasked with retrieving the hundreds of cones that have gone astray over the past 6 years. Conan Young went to take a look.
At the peak of the rebuild, up to 50,000 road cones were deployed in the city as the biggest rebuild project the country had ever seen rumbled on. Finding them in places they're not supposed to be is a common experience for most people here, and none more so than taxi driver Moajim Hushin.
And before going home, they are not tidying the road cones, so it will be difficult to drive at night, that maybe strong wind. Due to strong wind or any reason, just they are very unorganized, and some of them just falls down or topple over. So
have you ever had, I've seen a few people after a few drinks, they sort of decide to reorganise the road cones and block off roads. Have you ever had that happen?
Yes, we had that problem as well.
The Stronger Christchurch Infrastructure Rebuild Team, or SCIRT for short, has converted a Mitsubishi Diamante into the Conemobile to wrangle the ubiquitous safety markers and bring them all home safely. The agency, which is an alliance between the government and the council, estimates there could be up to 1,000 of them missing across the city. I asked Councillor Vicky Buck about the most unusual place she'd seen a road cone.
There are a lot around Christchurch in very, very unusual places that I suspect they haven't quite gotten there by themselves. So there are many in multi-storey buildings, up very high and in very unusual places. Trees, which is quite unusual, really, yeah. Especially this sort of cones and trees, yeah.
And so, any idea how they got there?
Can't imagine. It wasn't me, I can tell you that.
This could be quite an interesting job, whoever has this job of retrieving these things.
This will be a great job for somebody going out and finding cones, because they're going to find them in the most amazing places. And they're going to find so many of them as well. Yeah.
Look, people, because I have to try and sell this story to a national audience, and my chief reporter in Wellington was saying, why does this matter? But so just tell me why this matters in Christchurch.
So cones have sort of become part of the sort of personality of Christchurch in the last 5-6 years, because there are so many. I mean they have literally taken over over the city, and they are they've kind of been personified in lots of ways. So there are lots of stories about cones on Facebook everywhere, and they've kind of developed their own personality, which is kind of part of the city. I know that sounds incredibly weird, but hey, it's Christchurch.
So, I mean, in what ways have sort of people I guess, adopted these cones?
Well, for example, I started putting up some Facebook posts about cones, and now there is just like a never-ending supply of them, where people have got these cones talking to each other and creating sort of cartoon-like situations for cones. So, yeah, in some ways we're going to miss them.
SCIRT Skirt's head, Ian Campbell, says a dedicated team has been entrusted with the important task of bringing the cones home.
Typically we'll have a couple of people in the car, one obviously driving and one spotting and picking up the cones.
And so how long is this going to take?
Oh, we're doing it for about a month. We feel that should be enough. If the cones manage to elude us for that long, then they probably are well hidden.
And so why is this necessary?
A couple of reasons. One, of course, the cones are worth a bit of money. They cost about $60 each, and it makes sense to keep on using them. But secondly, it's all part of us, coming towards the end of our program and wanting to tidy up after ourselves and just take everything that we put on the streets and put it away.
And you might need some waders.
The people picking up the cones might need some waders, yes, but we'll make sure they enter the streams in a responsible manner.
Coming up, the Commerce Commission fears consumer price hikes if a proposed merger between Sky TV and Vodafone goes ahead. Australia's policy on asylum seekers is under fire again. Hundreds turn out in Christchurch to welcome the arrival of the first A380 aircraft. And it's Halloween, so we're out on the streets with the trick-or-treaters. But first, here's Katrina Batten with the headlines.
2 people have died in a helicopter crash in Glenbervie Pine Forest near Whangarei. Rescue services found the wreckage of the Robinson R44 this afternoon. The forest owner, Ryan Ye, says the helicopter was doing survey work for the company. The Robinson helicopter, already blamed for 18 deaths in New Zealand, is under scrutiny by the Transport Accident Investigation Commission. The widow of a linesman killed when a power pole fell over is accusing the power company Delta of putting profits above safety. Karen Steele's husband Roger was electrocuted in 2010 when the pole he was working on near Roxburgh in central Otago fell, throwing him more than 20 metres. Mrs Steele says she's shocked at claims by a former Delta staff member, Richard Healy, who says there are still thousands of rotting and unsafe power poles in Dunedin. The government says the sale of Solid Energy's mines has made the best of a bad situation. Stockton on the South Island's west coast and 2 Waikato mines, Rotorua and Maramarua, have been sold to a joint venture of Bathurst Resources and Tallies. The Minister of Finance, Bill English, says for the West Coast mine especially, the sale will provide a way forward. In the United States, Justice Department officials have obtained a warrant to search thousands of emails belonging to a senior aide to Hillary Clinton. On Friday, the head of the FBI, James Comey, announced he was reopening an investigation into Mrs. Clinton's use of a private email server when she was Secretary of State. The Democratic Party leader in the Senate says Mr. Comey's actions may have broken the law. There will be no decision from Dreamworld this week on when it might reopen. The Gold Coast theme park has been closed since last week's fatal accident in which 4 people were killed on a water ride. Its chief executive, Craig Davidson, says staff are gradually returning to work, but no commitment is being made this week to a timetable to reopen the park to the public. Those are the headlines. I'll be back at 6.
Thank you, Katrina. Turning to business news now with Nona Peltier, and we've got a new business confidence survey out today, Nona.
Yes, we have, and it's actually quite favourable. Not as strong as it was in the past, though. Slightly down, but still really strong. It's strong enough to show that perhaps our economy will grow even stronger than the 3.5% annual growth that we're seeing. So in terms of its strength, definitely there. However, there were some risks. Mostly in the area of credit. So some sectors of the economy are finding it hard to get credit from the bank. Interestingly, it's the construction sector and the agricultural sector. And we're seeing that as well. There's some concern there about skill shortages, being able to get the right number of people. And that somehow, we've seen that somewhat reflected in the building consents numbers that we got for September.
It's right, a 10-year high?
Yeah, so very strong, but still not enough momentum there in the Auckland region to satisfy the demand. And there is some evidence that part of the issue is that there's not enough materials and, once again, not enough staff. So that could potentially slow the economy going forward. So when we're looking ahead, it could be a sign of, some constraints to growth. And so, yeah, that could be something to watch for, and we'll see what happens with that.
And what happened on the markets today,
Well,
Nona?
as you can expect, the FBI is reopening the investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails, has caused some upset in the Asian markets. They've opened with some jitters, and we will expect to see that leading up to the election on the 8th of November, no doubt, and especially since the polls are narrowing between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump being the wild card in this election. And so our currency ended steady, even though the US dollar has weakened somewhat. We're at 71.5 US cents, 94 Australian, 58.7 British pence. And in the markets, we finished up 0.25%, and that was good because it was a little bit low leading up to the close there, and just popped up. So we finished up 17 points to 6,961.
Good news. Thanks, Nona. Could this be the final vote maker or vote breaker of the US election campaign? The FBI has now secured a warrant to examine newly discovered emails related to Hillary Clinton's private server just days before the US presidential election. FBI head James Comey told Congress at the weekend that his agency had uncovered new information which could be relevant to the investigation into Mrs. Clinton's email accounts. Senior Democrats are accusing him of disturbing double standard and what appears to be a clear intent to aid one political party over another. They also say he may have broken a law which bars officials from influencing an election. For her part, Hillary Clinton has been campaigning in Florida. The BBC's Gavin Hewitt has been travelling with her and has this report.
With the polls tightening, the Clinton campaign is mounting a fierce fight back against the FBI's decision to reveal it was looking at a fresh batch of emails related to their investigation into Hillary Clinton's private server. Her officials are pointing to the fact that a Department of Justice warned the FBI against disclosing that they were looking into a potentially new trove of emails. Hillary Clinton believes it is both strange and troubling to talk about a new inquiry so close to polling day.
There's a lot of noise and distraction, but it really comes down to what kind of future we want and who, as our president, can help us get there.
The Democrats are pointing out that no one knows whether this latest batch contains new emails or classified information. The FBI Director James Comey has repeatedly been attacked by the Republicans for closing the Clinton case in July, despite describing her handling of secret information as reckless. The Clinton campaign is demanding that the FBI explain its decision to reveal that it was in effect reopening the investigation.
It's just extremely puzzling. Why would you break these two protocols? Why would you release information that is so incomplete when you haven't even seen the material yourself 11 days before an election? Why would you talk about an ongoing investigation?
Ladies and gentlemen, the next and first female president of the United States,
Hillary Clinton, like her opponent, is investing large swathes of time in Florida. Last night, with an eye to appealing to the Hispanic community, she shared a stage with Jennifer Lopez in Miami. But there are early indications that this new investigation is chipping away at Hillary Clinton's lead in the polls.
The Clinton campaign's complaint is that the FBI's statement was long on innuendo and short on facts. And it's opened the doors for Donald Trump to accuse her of criminal and illegal activity.
These are anxious days for Hillary Clinton. Just days ago, her team believed victory was almost in its grasp.
Gavin Hewitt with that report. The Commerce Commission fears internet and pay TV subscribers could face long-term price hikes if it gives the green light to a proposed merger between Sky Television and Vodafone. The competition watchdog has written to both companies to express its concerns about unresolved issues with the proposal to combine their New Zealand businesses. Eric Frickberg reports.
The proposed merger, unveiled in June, would see Vodafone's British parent company take a 51% stake in Sky TV through a mix of new shares and $1.25 billion in cash. Sky TV shareholders backed the plan, which then went to the Commerce Commission. But that watchdog has reservations about the plan and has now made those fears public in a statement.
The Commission is currently not satisfied that the proposed merger will not have, or would not be likely to have, the effect of substantially lessening competition in the telecommunications and paid TV services markets.
A big fear is that Sky TV's near monopoly on televised sport could give Vodafone a captive market. Many objectors argued that people would be either forced or hugely incentivised to subscribe to Vodafone to watch premium sports like All Blacks matches, skewing competition in the broadband and mobile markets. The Commerce Commission statement echoed those worries and added further concerns about the prices which could be faced by consumers.
While consumers may initially benefit from lower prices, rival broadband and mobile providers could lose or fail to achieve scale and become less competitively effective. Over time, this could reduce competition in these markets and potentially enable the merged entity to raise prices or lower the quality of service.
Jordan Carter of Internet New Zealand is welcoming the Commission's comments.
The Commission needed to find a way to get binding undertakings from the companies that the problems that we were worried about, network neutrality, access to content and so on, wouldn't happen. So it's clear that the Commission is taking the concern seriously.
Also pleased about the move is Craig Young of the Telecommunications Users Association.
It's going to be very interesting to see how the two companies will come back and their proposals to the Commission. It does seem that we get to have another look at these once it comes back and to have a view on those as well.
Mr Young's concern is that Sky TV would have little incentive to sell its content such as sport to other internet companies when it could keep it for itself. But speaking back in June, Vodafone's chief executive Russell Stanners said the new merged entity would sell its contents to other internet companies as well to make the most of getting as many outlets as it can.
Content's always looking for different networks to go over, and we're pretty excited about the opportunity to look at new exciting formats over time and how we can deliver that content. So I think for your rugby fans out there, you've got the choice you got today, and hopefully there's a lot more options for them going forward.
For now, both Vodafone and Sky are saying little other than to praise the Commerce Commission's handling of the matter in a statement. The Commission seeking further submissions from both companies on the areas it's concerned about, with other interested parties also invited to give their feedback. Those submissions are due by Friday next week. For Checkpoint Core, Eric Frickberg, 10A.
A UMR research poll released today has shown massive opposition to KiwiSaver savings being invested in tobacco companies, fast food companies and businesses who dodge tax. Community campaign group Action Station crowdfunded to commission the research, which surveyed 750 New Zealanders in September, just weeks after Radio New Zealand first revealed many KiwiSaver members were unknowingly investing in companies making cluster bombs and anti-personnel mines. A short time ago, I spoke with Action Station National Director Marion Elliott, and I started by asking her about KiwiSaver investments in companies who dodge tax.
So the survey showed that 86% of the respondents to the survey disapproved of their savings being invested in companies that dodge tax here in New Zealand and abroad.
And when we talk about these tax dodging companies, who are we talking about here?
Well, that's not specified in the survey. So, the respondents are coming to their own conclusions, presumably about that. But we know that the coverage that we've seen in the media has been of the large multinationals who have been avoiding paying tax in New Zealand by diverting their profits offshore. There's been a good amount of coverage of that, so we could infer perhaps that those are the sorts of companies that people had in mind.
And what are they saying about investments in junk food and sugary drinks?
Well, I'll be honest, this one surprised me. It came out very strongly as well. 74% of the respondents disapproved of their KiwiSaver savings being invested in companies that produce junk food and sugary drinks. That's going to be, I think that's going to come as a surprise to a lot of people, because there are a lot of large multinational companies that own subsidiaries that are involved in the production of junk food and sugary drinks. So 74% of New Zealanders not happy with their savings being invested in those companies.
Also very strong feeling against investment in tobacco companies?
That's right. 81% of the respondents disapproved of their savings being invested in tobacco. So that's perhaps, for me anyway, less surprising, given what we know and have known for a long time now about the harmful effects of tobacco. But yes, very high levels of disapproval there.
And so what is the overall message from this survey?
Well, what I believe this is New Zealand is making it very clear that they want their money invested in industries that are making things better, not those that are making it worse, and that really having their savings invested in unethical companies just isn't okay by them.
Last week, Vanguard, which is one of the world's biggest fund managers, actually announced a new KiwiSaver fund which excludes tobacco and weapons companies, the big weapons makers. But that, if it was listening to a survey like this, that only really goes part of the way. So do you imagine that there's going to be a lot more pressure from KiwiSavers for these big fund managers to look again at their other investments?
I think so. I don't think this is going to go away. I think that a lot of New Zealanders were shocked when they learnt what their savings had been invested in. And now that they know, I don't think New Zealanders are really going to be happy until they can be reassured that none of their savings are invested in industries that they find unethical. And as this research shows, New Zealanders have strong views about that.
You've got a petition calling for legislative change. Where is that at?
So that petition was actually delivered last week. It was delivered to Jane Shaw from the Green Party, who's been sort of actively following this issue up in Parliament, and he will now pass that petition through Parliament to a select committee, whichever committee the House decides is relevant. And so that was more than 16,000 New Zealanders calling for legislative reform. And the reason for that was that it's one thing to have, fund providers respond to pressure from users, but that can only happen when those users know what's going on. And it's a very high standard of responsibility for an ordinary New Zealander to be able to uncover and understand in detail exactly where their money might be invested. And what we know is that for many New Zealanders, there are certain standards that they think should not be negotiable. And certainly around the weapons, which is what that petition is specifically related to, the very, very high levels of disapproval in New Zealand saying that that just shouldn't be allowed at all.
And that's Action Station's Marianne Elliott. Australia's policy on asylum seekers is under fire again as the government proposes legislation to impose a lifetime ban on those who try to make it to Australia by boat. The ban would affect asylum seekers and refugees in the Manus Island and Nauru detention centres and would stop them from ever being granted any type of visa to enter Australia. The Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, is defending the plan and he's got the support of the One Nation leader, Senator Pauline Hanson. From Canberra, the ABC's Peter Donald has this report.
This morning from Ceduna in South Australia, the Prime Minister harked back to the language of John Howard while defending his government's latest move on asylum seeker policy.
Australia is very generous to refugees. Our ability to be generous to refugees, our ability to take those large numbers of refugees is there because we maintain the security of our borders, because we decide who is coming here. We don't outsource that to the people smugglers.
The proposal to ban those who tried to come to Australia by boat from ever being granted any kind of visa to come here has been welcomed by One Nation. The party's leader, Pauline Hanson, on Channel 7 this morning.
We need to make a very tough stance and put out a clear message. Refugees are not welcome here. Now, we know the majority come here for economic reasons, that they actually come here, end up in our welfare system. Australians are fed up with it, and a matter of fact, so am I.
The Greens leader, Richard Di Natale, says the government does have One Nation in mind.
What you're seeing here is a Liberal Party recognising that you've got groups like One Nation chewing into their vote, and they're now pandering to the extreme right.
The government is challenging Labor to support its legislation to help it pass the Senate, while the Greens are urging Labor to help block it.
Some of these people have children born here in Australia, and the government's saying to them that under no circumstances will they be allowed to settle here. And I just think this is a big opportunity for the Labor Party, the crossbench, to stand up and say, we reject this. Australians, we're better than this. We're going to show a bit of decency and compassion.
Labor is trying to avoid the wedge. So far, it's only saying it will look at the government's legislation before saying what it will do. Labor frontbencher Andrew Lee on Sky.
The key for the 800-odd people who are on Manus and the 800-odd people on Nauru is to find third country resettlement. This bill won't resettle a single refugee. It won't save a single dollar from the budget. Won't create a single job for Australians. It's just another step in the steady metamorphosis of Malcolm Turnbull back into Tony Abbott.
The government says it's had legal advice that it's not in breach of Australia's international obligations. The Foreign Minister, Julie Bishop, says the government's negotiating with a number of third countries to resettle those found to be refugees on Manus Island and Nauru. The Immigration Minister, Peter Dutton, suggested the lifetime ban on visas to Australia could be linked.
When we do have a third country resettlement arrangement in place, we are not going to have a situation where people then come to Australia through a different visa class because that gaming of the system would send a very clear message to people smugglers that the government's policy was ineffective.
At the same time, he's talking down the New Zealand option.
People smugglers market New Zealand in the same way as they do Australia in terms of the support services, the settlement services, health, welfare, accommodation. And that deal doesn't work. We need to look at all of these cases individually, but I am very keen to get people off Manus and Nauru, but I'm not going to do it in a way that when we create vacancies, they're just filled by new arrivals. That would be a disaster.
And that's Australian Immigration Minister Peter Dutton ending that report from Peter Donald. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister John Campbell says the imminent law change in Australia does not increase the likelihood of New Zealand's offer to accept asylum seekers being taken up. The Australian government has repeatedly talked down New Zealand as a third country option for refugees on Nauru and Papua New Guinea's Manus Island. In 2013, New Zealand offered to take 150 people a year, an offer that is still on the table but has not been taken up. Mr Key says the law change would effectively mean New Zealand would have to have separate classes of citizens.
Fundamentally, there's a free movement of people from one country to the other. And that's based on that you are a New Zealand resident or citizen at least, and that ultimately you don't have criminal convictions. Now, there's nothing in there about refugee status. There will have been other refugees that have come to New Zealand and ultimately gone to Australia. So we'll obviously need to see what legislation they try and draft. But yeah, we've got no intention of having separate classes of New Zealand citizens.
The Prime Minister John Campbell. About 1,000 Christchurch locals turned out to watch the first scheduled arrival of the giant A380 aircraft in the city this afternoon. Plane spotters skipped work and school, arriving as early as 10 a.m. to get a prime spot along the Christchurch airport fence line to watch as the Airbus A380 touched down from Dubai just before 2 o'clock this afternoon. The Emirates aircraft is about 24 metres high, similar to a 10-storey building, more than 70 metres long and can seat up to 615 passengers. Plane spotters RNZ News spoke to after the aircraft landed weren't disappointed.
Holy hell, I have no words. I literally have no words seeing the A380 finally come here in Christchurch for the first scheduled time.
Yeah, it's quite big, isn't it, when it's sitting here like this? Very, very interesting, yeah.
And did it live up to expectations?
More than that, I think.
I was in the Air Force and I just love aviation, even at my age. And I was one of the first ones here this morning.
I've been studying about planes a lot, and this is the second biggest plane in the world.
Yeah, we're right into aviation. We build flight simulators, so we thought we'd come out and have a wee look. And yeah, it's quite a big day for Christchurch City, really.
I'm here to enjoy the weather, enjoy plane spotting, and mingle amongst my own kind.
Oh, it was great. Yeah, I really enjoyed it, watching it come in. Yeah, it was really quiet, and it stopped pretty quickly, and the runway seemed to handle it okay. So yeah, it was worth taking a day off work to come and see it.
The A380 flight from Dubai via Sydney will land in Christchurch 7 days a week. Christchurch and Canterbury Tourism says the daily A380 flights are a vote of confidence in the city and will bring more tourists to Christchurch. Now, while police might be warning people off dressing up as clowns for Halloween tonight, The country's biggest costume shop is warning of something some might describe as equally scary. Popular picks for trick-or-treating this year are Donald Trump and the character Harley Quinn from the movie Suicide Squad. Well, Sally Murphy is at the Auckland home of Greg and Joanna McCowan, who go all out for Halloween, we understand. And Sally, oh yes, I can see you're going all out there. Who have you got there?
Well, this is Jo. She's been doing her house up like this since her own children were young, and it looks great, Jo. You put a lot of effort into this. Can you just walk us through and show us what you've done?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you can see, first of all, we have our pirate's boat. That actually my dad built this boat, so it's kind of a prop from family times. But he's a pirate and obviously not going very far at the moment. He got a bit stuck.
Yeah.
And then we have the stocks, which you don't want to get stuck in because you could actually lift them up and use them, but
they're the real deal.
They're the real deal, but we don't use them anymore because, you know, the last man got stuck in there, so never mind.
Awesome.
And then we go down to the coffin that the family decided to build just in case I might need one day. But we've used it for this young lady who must have been on a date that went a little bit wrong.
And what have you got over here?
Oh, over here is our array of, could be real, could be not real. Depends on what the young people think. So some are made of apple boxes and some may be human.
And so all of this effort, why do you do it?
Oh, we've done it since really our children were not that young, but they were in their like 11 when they really started getting into it, and there wasn't much happening for them, and we thought, well, we'll start doing it for them. In fact, my oldest daughter went, in first house she went to, her lovely dentist she visited gave her toothpaste, which was very kind of her, and it's a good idea.
Yeah.
But so we've just done it ever since, just so that they have something to come and enjoy. It's great for parents. You know, I see it as a thing for parents and children to enjoy together.
Well, we've only been here about 20 minutes and there's been dozens of kids through. How many kids do you get every year?
Well, it's growing and growing. So last year was very big because it was a weekend, so we got over 500.
Wow.
So, yeah, but this year will be a little bit less because it's a Monday, so, yeah.
And what kind of reactions do you get from the kids? There's a few sort of waiting to come in the gate, they're not quite sure.
Yeah, some won't come in, so you go out to them. They are a bit scared, and I don't blame them, because if I was very little, I'd probably be scared too.
Yeah.
So, but as I say, originally we started catering for those slightly older children, but, you know, like, so standard 4, standard 3 up, but the little ones get a bit scared, but Mum and Dad come in, they turn us into frogs, and then that's all fine, and they're happy.
And you've got the scary wolf on, you've got some more scary people on the doorstep,
yeah.
And the sound effects and everything's moving here in the background. What scares the kids the most?
I think probably when they see the people moving, really, the music a little bit, because for the younger ones it's a bit atmospheric.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you get any tears?
We've had, originally we used to have things and occasionally children didn't look and would fall over them, so we've now removed those. So there's no children falling over anymore. So, yeah.
Oh, even the small ones come out.
The small ones come out, yeah.
How cute.
So, Sally, have you seen any Donald Trumps yet?
No, I just love seeing them all. Even the ones that don't necessarily dress up, I think it's just cool that they come out. But, you know, even the simplest white sheet does it for me.
Have you seen any kids dress up as Donald Trump yet?
No, thank goodness.
What about any Hillary Clintons?
No, thank goodness.
None of them through the door yet?
No.
Well,
no.
It's awesome. I wish you have a happy Halloween, and we'll let you get back to your work here.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Happy
Thanks,
Halloween.
Sally. That's our reporter out and about with the trick-or-treaters for Halloween in Auckland. Kia ora everyone, you're with Checkpoint with Sharon Brett Kelly on RNZ National. On the radio as always, but we're also screening live on Freeview Channel 50 and streaming live on the RNZ website. Tonight, the company that contracted a helicopter to do survey work says it's devastated to find out the Robinson R44 has crashed in Northland killing 2 people. Seismologists warn Italy could continue to shake for weeks following yesterday's 6.6 magnitude earthquake. The partner of a convicted fraudster given just months to live is pleading with the parole board to allow her to live her final months at home. And a national day to officially commemorate the New Zealand Wars will be held from next year. And as always, we'd love to get your feedback. Don't forget you can email us radionz.co.nz. You can send us a tweet I should say, at Checkpoint RNZ. Facebook.com/checkpointrnz if you want to send us a message on Facebook, or text us on 2101. And don't forget you can watch us online at rnz.co.nz/checkpoint or on Freeview Channel 50. And very shortly we'll be coming up to the Pips at 6 o'clock. They're not far away, and that's
RNZ News at 6. Ngā mihi nui, good evening, ko Katrina Batanaho. 2 people have been killed in a helicopter crash in a Northland forest. The wreckage of the Robinson R44 was found in the Glenbervie pine forest near Whangarei this afternoon. The Rescue Coordination Centre says the chopper's distress beacon was set off just after 1 o'clock and Whangarei's rescue helicopter reached the scene just after 2. The forest owner, Ryanair, says the helicopter was doing survey work for the company when it crashed. Its chief executive, Paul Nicol, says the company and staff were distraught. He says the 2 men were well known to Whangarei forestry staff who have been helping emergency services at the crash scene.
They were contractors and we have used them for many years, so this is like family to us, and we can only sympathise and offer our condolences to the families and relatives.
Paul Nicol of Ryanair. The widow of a linesman who died after a power pole he was working on collapsed is accusing the power company Delta of putting profits above safety. Karen Steele's husband Roger was electrocuted in December 2010 when a pole in Miller's Flat near Roxburgh toppled over, throwing him down a riverbank. A former Delta staff member, Richard Healy, says there were still thousands of rotting and unsafe power poles in Dunedin, a claim which is being investigated by WorkSafe New Zealand and Dunedin City Holdings. Karen Steele says Delta needs to sort out its priorities.
It's unbelievable that there are so many poles that are red flagged. Everything boils down to money. They haven't been giving the maintenance and their core business the money to fix these poles.
Karen Steele. The government says the sale of Solid Energy's mines has made the best of a bad situation. Stockton on the South Island's west coast and 2 Waikato mines, Rotowaro and Maramarua, have been sold to a joint venture of Bathurst Resources and the food company Tallies. The Labour Party says having to sell the mines is a sad indictment on the government's failings, but the Finance Minister, Bill English, says it could not do better.
No, we're absolutely sure it's the right thing. The government had bailed out Solid Energy once before, then it got in trouble again. The government's track record in these commodity businesses is government ownership isn't that good. But look, this is making the best of a situation we would have all been better to have avoided.
Bill English says for the West Coast especially, the sale will give the mine a way forward. The Prime Minister is acknowledging there has been an increase in certain types of crime, but says overall crime rates are continuing to drop. The police recorded 276,000 victims overall for the year ended September, an increase of more than 14,000 on the previous year. There were nearly 6,400 burglaries in September, bringing the year's total to nearly 73,000, a rise of almost 18%. John Key says there are areas where numbers have increased.
Individual categories, some of them have risen and some of them have plateaued and then started rising again. So certainly we know reported violent crime, domestic crime and burglaries have been increasing.
John Key says the government has a good record on law and order and would be happy if that is a feature of next year's general election. Since the end of August, the police have been directed to treat burglaries as priority offences. A senior Democrat says the head of the FBI may have broken the law by revealing the Bureau was investigating emails possibly linked to Hillary Clinton. The Democratic leader in the Senate, Harry Reid, is accusing FBI Director James Comey of violating an act that bars officials from influencing an election. Meanwhile, the FBI has obtained a warrant to search emails belonging to a top Clinton aide, Huma Abedin. Her emails are believed to have been found on the laptop of her estranged husband, former Congressman Anthony Weiner, who the FBI is investigating after sexually explicit messages were sent to an underage girl. The Commerce Commission is worried internet and pay TV subscribers could face long-term price rises if a proposed merger between Sky Television and Vodafone proceeds. The competition watchdog has written to both companies to express its concerns. Fears have been expressed that Sky TV's dominance of televised sport would skew the internet and mobile market in favour of its partner Vodafone. Vodafone has said this would not happen, but the Commission wants further analysis. Jordan Carter of Internet New Zealand is welcoming the Commission's comments.
The Commission needed to find a way to get binding undertakings from the companies that the problems that we were worried about, access to content, network neutrality and so on, wouldn't happen. So it's clear that the Commission is taking the concern seriously.
Jordan Carter's views are shared by the Telecommunication Users Association. It's 6:05. To sport, and the Phoenix sit dead last in the A-League football competition following 3 straight defeats to start the season and are yet to score a goal. While their inability to front is a major issue, their defence has leaked 4 goals and they'll be put under pressure by former player Marco Rojas and the rest of the Melbourne Victory when the two sides play tonight in Melbourne. Wellington defender Jacob Tratt concedes the Phoenix backline will need to shore up some frailties if they're to break their losing streak.
Obviously they've got a great attacking lineup throughout the whole squad, so there's a lot to mark up against, but we've got a very strong defensive outfit with experience with Marco Rossi and Andrew Durante as well.
Jacob Tratt. The match kicks off at 10-10 tonight. Meanwhile, Chelsea have managed to keep pace with the top 3 in English Premier League football with a 2-0 win at Southampton. Everton beat West Ham 2-0. The Chicago Cubs have kept the Major League Baseball World Series alive following their 3-2 victory over the Cleveland Indians at Wrigley Field in Chicago. The Indians lead 3-2 in the best-of-7 series. The final 2 matches will be held in Cleveland. The New Zealand scullers Mahe Drysdale and Emma Twigg have both been beaten over a sprint distance at a rowing regatta in Philadelphia. Mahe Drysdale was shut out in the Men's Gold Cup race by the man who he beat in Rio, Demir Martin. Twigg was also second in her event. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Fadwa Hodali debuts as our new Palestinian correspondent on the line from Bethlehem. We have a window on the world of Ascension Island, otherwise known as the Mars of the Mid-Atlantic. And our botanist Beck Stanley brings the after-dinner science discussing plant blindness. Yes, I know plants can't see. The problem is we humans often fail to notice them as well. On Nights with me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Met Service weather through to midnight tomorrow. From Northland to Taranaki, including Coromandel, Bay of Plenty and the Central High Country, mainly fine. However, isolated showers clearing this evening. Some heavy with thunderstorms possible from Northland to northern Waikato. Cloud increasing tomorrow with rain spreading from the west during the afternoon and evening. Gisborne to Wairarapa, showers north of Napier clearing this evening and becoming mainly fine everywhere. Showers returning tomorrow afternoon. Whanganui to Wellington, fine, cloud increasing tomorrow evening with the odd spot of rain. For Marlborough, Nelson and Buller, mainly fine, however isolated afternoon or evening showers inland today and periods of rain from tomorrow afternoon. Canterbury to Southland, mainly fine, scattered rain developing south of Christchurch tomorrow afternoon or evening. For Westland and Fiordland, isolated showers turning to rain tomorrow morning, then easing later. The Chatham Islands, a few showers. It's just gone 6:08 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Thank you, Katrina. The partner of a convicted fraudster given just months to live is pleading to the parole board not to return her to prison. On Friday, we brought you the story of Vicky Latali, who's been sentenced to 3 years in jail for property fraud. She has served 6 months of that sentence, but recently Vicky was diagnosed with terminal stomach cancer and is receiving treatment at Middlemore Hospital. Despite the submissions of her doctors, who are adamant Vicky is not well enough to return to prison, the parole board has declined her early release. The family's lawyer is working on another application to get Vicky home. Today I spoke to her partner, Leah Whitihira, who explained why she shouldn't go back to prison.
I know corrections they're doing their best to try and meet her needs, but there's no heart in it. So there's no rubbing of the back when she's spewing over the toilet bowl. They're just doing their jobs.
And she's suffering a lot.
Yep, and it's not nice to see anyone suffer. And to suffer alone, we're only in there 4 hours a day, which I'm grateful for. But what about the other hours? We don't know what's going on, and Vicky's not one of those people that will jump up and down.
What worries you most about her having to return to her prison cell?
Just not having anyone there to help her, to comfort her, to make her something to eat, to help her shower, to clean up after herself. And Vicky's a very conservative person, so she will try and do it. If not, if we're not there, she will try her best to do that. And when she's not very well, it's difficult.
What do you think she needs the most right now?
Her family 24/7. To hear her kids playing, laughing, reading. And when she's at home, we just live not far from Middlemore, so it will take us 5 minutes to get to the hospital should she need to get there. Whereas the last time it took an hour and a half from prison.
What will it mean for you and for the children to have her home?
That's what we're praying for. That's what we want. We want her last days or months or however long with us.
And that's Leah Whitihira, the partner of a convicted fraudster, Vicky Latali, who's been given just months to live. The company that contracted a helicopter to do survey work says it's gutted at the news the Robinson R44 has crashed, killing 2 people. The wreckage of the helicopter was found in the Glenbervie pine forest near Whangarei this afternoon. The forest owner, Reonie, says the helicopter was doing survey work for the company when it crashed. Our Northland reporter Lois Williams spoke to the manager of Reonie Forests, Paul Nicol, a short time ago.
Oh, it's just tragic. Tragic for everyone that's involved, the families, the people that are involved in the forest operations that will know these people. So, there's not a lot we can say at this stage. We don't know exactly what's happened, but clearly we're all pretty gutted by what's happened.
They weren't your staff, but they were contractors, is that right?
They were contractors, and we have used them for many years, so this is like family to us, and we can only sympathise and offer our condolences to the families and relatives.
Mm. So were they local people? Were they Whangarei people?
We believe they are, but again, I'll leave that up to the police and the authorities to make any official statements along those lines.
Sure. And I understand your health and safety manager and operations director are on their way up.
Yeah, they're up there to support our local staff. Obviously, for our local staff, it's also pretty traumatic. So
They're helping at the scene.
Yes, they will assist the emergency services in whatever way they can.
And that's the manager of Raonier Forest, Paul Nichols, speaking out with our reporter Lois Williams. To quake rattled central Italy now, where seismologists are warning that earthquakes could go on for weeks in a domino effect along Italy's central Apennine fault system. Thousands of people are spending the night in cars, tents and temporary accommodation following yesterday's 6.6 magnitude earthquake. It was the strongest quake in Italy for 3 decades and followed a series of quakes over the past 2 months, the worst in August, which killed 300 people. About 20 people have been injured in the latest quake, but no deaths have been reported. Powerful aftershocks are still rocking the region, further damaging homes and historic buildings. CNN's Barbie Nadeau is in the area and sent this report.
The devastating earthquake that struck central Italy on Sunday morning may not have caused any loss of life, but it certainly ruined communities and people's daily lives. These villages in central Italy, which were hit by twin earthquakes last week, and in a region that was struck by a deadly earthquake that killed nearly 300 people in August, are devastated. People have nowhere to stay. Their homes are unsafe. The Civil Protection Agency is urging anyone that still thinks they can sleep in their homes in this area to leave for a safer place until the aftershocks stop and until the earth settles back down. Italy's Prime Minister Matteo Renzi vowed that the Italian government will rebuild the communities that have been destroyed.
Noi ricostruiremo tutto.
We will rebuild everything: houses, churches, shops. They are beautiful landscapes, territories whose identities are tied to beauty and the sense of welcoming.
Stiamo parlando di territori che fanno della bellezza.
But it really is going to be up to the people who've lost everything to see whether they have the courage and the will to return to an area that they've called home for so long that's no longer there.
And that was Barbie Nadeau in central Italy. Commuters in South Auckland have had their first taste of the biggest change to ever hit New Zealand's public transport system. Auckland Transport says the scale of the overhaul, which is part of its new network, is unprecedented. Joanna Mackenzie reports.
Almost 100 Auckland Transport staff were on the ground around the public transport routes in South Auckland this morning to help commuters with their journeys. At the old bus depot in Otahuhu on Avenue Road, staff in high-vis vests were personally escorting people to the right bus stops. The suburb's new bus station is now part of a $28.7 million transport hub, which was officially opened at the weekend. These passengers turning up on Avenue Road were a bit confused and frustrated about where they should be and how long their journey would take.
The numbers have changed, the bus numbers. Before we were getting 471. But now we have to get 33 something like that, I don't know. Before it was written Great South Road in Greenland like that, but now we don't know. It's something else written on the bus.
I tried to go to the hospital for one of my appointments. It's pretty hard for me. I have to walk there because I'm not 100% all right. I have to go to where the library is, Otahuhu Library.
Usually there's express buses running, but I think they've cancelled all of them. And I've got exams this week, so I wish they had told us what bus stops we had to go to before.
I'm going to work now. Now I'm an hour late because of the new changing of the bus. And we've been here about an hour. There's a bus only come from Sevier Park, nothing going to town.
The changes are part of a complete transformation of the city's public transport network, which includes new routes, timetables and new bus numbers. Brandon Main from Auckland Transport says this phase of the new network has been a long time in the planning. He expects there to be problems early on as new bus drivers learn the routes, but on the whole, he's happy with how the rollout is going.
Of course, any change of this nature requires customers to be able to have time to get familiar with what the best options are for them, so we'll be out on the street to help customers as much as we can over the next few days.
Auckland Transport says there's been 50 complaints, mostly about the loss of some express bus services. The editor of the transport blog, Matt Lowry, says making changes of this scale has been a huge exercise for AT. He says it'll take some getting used to for passengers, but the process has been well managed.
What's been seen overseas is that initially you might see a reduction in usage overall, and that's simply because there are some people who are going to be put off by the changes. But overall, once once other people start to learn about what the new network enables, because you've got more frequent services to more locations, a better overall network, they see long-term growth.
Major changes are also in the pipeline for the rest of the city, with the next phase happening in West Auckland in the middle of next year. Changes for East Auckland and the central suburbs are slated for later next year, and the North Shore in early 2018. In Auckland for Checkpoint, called Joanna Mackenzie-Tene.
The FBI has reportedly obtained a warrant to search thousands of emails belonging to top Hillary Clinton aide Huma Abedin. Ms. Abedin's emails are believed to have been found on the laptop of her estranged husband, Anthony Weiner. The discovery prompted FBI Director James Comey to write to members of Congress at the weekend, informing them of a new inquiry related to Hillary Clinton's emails and creating a fresh political firestorm just days out from the election. Harry Horton reports from Washington.
There's been no time for the dust to settle following FBI Director James Comey's shock announcement on Friday. Hillary Clinton's team face a difficult week with the prospect of a daily trickle of details about the FBI's new inquiry into emails possibly linked to the Democratic nominee. Her campaign team have turned their fire onto James Comey. On Sunday, Clinton Press Secretary Brian Fallon released a video placing questions firmly at the FBI's front door.
Former Justice Department officials say this violated protocols intended to prevent action that could be seen as influencing the election. And Attorney General Loretta Lynch reportedly told him not to do it for this very reason. So Director Comey owes it to the American people to say what he has, and both campaigns agree on that point. We're beyond confident that there is nothing at issue here that would be cause to revisit the decision announced back in July.
And later on Sunday, the Democratic leader in the US Senate, outgoing Senator Harry Reid, accused James Comey of breaking the law. In a letter, he said Mr. Comey may have violated the Hatch Act, which bars officials from using their positions to influence an election. For the Trump campaign, Comey's actions are a gift. Hillary Clinton's emails are now the main focus of Donald Trump's rallies. Speaking to supporters in Colorado on Sunday, Donald Trump accused Hillary Clinton of playing the victim card.
Hillary Clinton is not the victim, by the way. She's not the victim. You, the American people, are the victims of this corrupt system in every way. And this is your last chance to change it.
The opinion polls were narrowing for several days before news of the new FBI probe came out. It will take some time before polls fully reflect any change on voters' minds. And with reports that the FBI have more than 650,000 emails to search through, it's unlikely the inquiry will conclude before the election in 8 days' time. What is certain is that Donald Trump's campaign are far more confident about winning this election than they were a week ago. But picture this, the choice in voters' minds now is to back a man accused of sexual assault or vote for a woman who might be under some sort of criminal investigation by the FBI. For many Americans, what they really want is for this unpredictable and unprecedented election to be over and to put the whole process behind them. For Checkpoint, I'm Harry Horton in Washington.
A national day to officially commemorate the New Zealand Wars will be held from next year. The date will be October the 28th, the same date as the signing of the Declaration of Independence in 1835. The first recorded battle between Māori and government troops was at Wairau at the top of the South Island in June 1843. By the early 1970s, about 3,000 Pākehā and Māori had been killed in the New Zealand Wars. Rahui Papa chairman of the Waikato Executive, Te Ara Taura, says there's wide support for the decision to mark the events, and he acknowledges 2 Otorohanga schoolgirls who took a petition to Parliament calling for such a commemoration. Mr Papa spoke to our Māori Issues correspondent, Mihi Ngarangi Forbes, this afternoon.
Because these are events that have helped shape the nation as we know it today. Those stories are untold.
Will it help people heal? I know it was generations ago, but those stories still live on in whānau.
By facing up to some of the occurrences of that time, you know, you can make movies on this stuff. There's bravery, there's camaraderie, there's aggression, there's invasion, there's a whole host of themes that can be told across the country.
Is this our Braveheart?
I think very much so. And each region and each battle site has their own story to tell. And you're quite right that it's a Braveheart type situation that happened at Ruapekapeka, at Rangiriri, at Orako, at Cape Pa, at Wairingahika. All across the country there are these stories that remain virtually untold.
Does it sadden you that there's a part of Aotearoa that still refuses to acknowledge that these were invasions, and rather they say that they were a group of rebels?
This may help to bring everybody in the nation to a greater understanding.
And tell me about the first commemoration.
It'll be special. That will be up to the Te Tokero area to host the first one in 2017, particularly because of the date, and it commemorates also the signing of the whakaputanga of the Declaration of Independence in 1835. And that story is virtually untold as well. There are some historical pieces on it, but Te Tokero, I'm sure, will make sure that there will be a wonderful, wonderful commemoration, a national commemoration day that'll be supported and attended by many, many people.
And that's Rahui Papa talking about a national day to officially commemorate the New Zealand wars that will be held from next year, and the date will be October the 28th. Iceland's centre-right Independence Party has defied expectations to come out on top in general elections, surviving a strong challenge from the anti-establishment Pirate Party. Ashraf Fahim reports.
Voters in Iceland opted for stability in their general election. Polls had predicted victory for the anti-establishment Pirate Party because of lingering anger over the 2008 financial crisis and an offshore tax haven scandal this year involving government figures. Instead, it was the center-right Independence Party that won the most seats in parliament. Party leader Bjarni Benediktsson.
Certainly, based on this, we hope to continue in government and form a strong new government for Iceland's future.
Voters appear to have recognized the government's efforts to stabilize the economy. But no party won an outright majority. And the Progressive Party, the biggest in the establishment, lost more than half its share of the vote. Its leader, Prime Minister Sigurdur Johannsson, resigned as a formality. In the capital, Reykjavik, Pirate Party members celebrated their showing of 10 to 15% of the vote despite falling short of expectations. They say they won't work with the Independence Party and will form an alliance with other opposition parties as Iceland tries to form a new government.
Ashraf Fahim with that report. Well, it wasn't quite Kung Fu Panda, but a young man who jumped into a panda enclosure at a zoo in China to impress his friends got more than he bargained for. Andy Moore has the story.
It all started well enough. With a cheery, confident wave, the young man stepped into the panda's den. It was reported he was trying to impress two female friends. But he made the mistake of waking a sleeping giant, in this case a 12-year-old male panda called Mei Ling. The animal grabbed his leg and wouldn't let go. Pandas don't just eat bamboo shoots, they also eat small animals, and their teeth can cause real damage. But fortunately, this animal seemed more intent on a bit of play fighting. The young man tried a bit of gentle encouragement to get out of its grip, but that didn't work. Giant pandas have got their name for a very good reason. This animal weighs about 120 kilograms, probably about twice the weight of the young man he was sitting on top of. Eventually, the intruder did manage to get away and left a little more hurriedly than he'd arrived.
The young man left the zoo right after he got out of the enclosure and we couldn't get in touch with him. Witnesses said his trousers were torn a little, but he should be okay. We arranged medical checks for the panda and told the keepers to closely observe his condition. So far, the animal seems absolutely fine.
But for now, Mei Ling is back to his solitary existence and just left to wonder who will be next for a bit of gentle wrestling.
That's the BBC's Andy Moore reporting there. The Prime Minister says overall crime rates are continuing to drop, but acknowledges there has been an increase in certain types of crime. Police recorded 276,000 victims overall for the year ended September, an increase of more than 14,000 from the previous year. There were nearly 6,400 burglaries during the month, bringing the year's total to nearly 73,000, a rise of almost 18%. John Key says there are areas where numbers have increased.
Individual categories, some of them have risen and some of them have plateaued and then started rising again. So certainly we know reported violent crime, domestic crime and burglaries have been increasing. I don't think it's new that election campaigns have a healthy dose of law and order debate when it comes to the election campaign trail and policies that political parties want to campaign on. If the election is going to be held on law and order, as well as probably a couple of other issues, including the economy, then that'll suit National.
Since the end of August, the police have been directed to treat burglaries as priority offences. And that's Checkpoint for this evening. Thanks for joining us on your radio, your television, online, or however you chose to connect with us today. You can hear highlights in late edition at 10:15 this evening, or any of our stories tonight on rnz.co.nz/checkpoint. And for all the latest news, information, feature stories from New Zealand and around the world, go to the rnz.co.nz homepage. So from me, Sharon Brett Kelly, and the Checkpoint team, have a great night.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. 2 forestry contractors have been killed in a helicopter crash near Whangarei. A senior Democrat says the head of the FBI may have broken the law by revealing it's investigating emails possibly linked to Hillary Clinton. The Prime Minister says the sale of coal mines owned by failed state miner Solid Energy is welcome news. And there'll be no decision from the Dreamworld theme park this week on when it might reopen following last week's fatal accident. Our next news and weather is at 7.
Worlds of Music is a world music program with a difference. Every week we present an eclectic mix of world music, fusion and folk roots from all over the planet. The program includes a variety of artists, interviews and musical curiosities. Join me, Trevor Reiki, on Worlds of Music, Tuesdays at 11:05 p.m, on Nights with Brian Crum